Hi everyone, my name's Anne. Thanks for joining me on Art on the Creek. We are here today for lesson number 15 of our first series of 15 beginner watercolor lessons. There will be a link in the description of this video to all the lessons. You don't need to do them in order. There's no progression of skill. It's just practice, practice, practice. So today for our practice, I thought what we could do, since May is just around the corner, let's go ahead and paint a beautiful basket of lilac blooms. Are you ready? Let's give it a go. Alrighty, for our usual suspects today, I have our Princeton Neptune Snap watercolor brushes. All of the supplies that I'm using here today will be listed in the description. You don't have to use these supplies. It's simply the ones that I recommend. You can certainly use whatever supplies you have around the house. I have a regular school supply Clic pencil, a kneaded eraser, and our Paul Rubens watercolor cold press book. These are about 5 by 7, easy to frame. And then we have our Winsor Cotman watercolors. Okay, as you'll see here, my palette is dirty. I'm going to leave it like that. We don't need to always clean the palette, and sometimes that's good paint. We can still use it. First thing I want to do is to tape off the edges of my my paper here. You'll know that I have way too much washi tape, and I'm trying to use it up. Oh, look at that. This one's done too. There we go. I love it when I get through a roll, and then you watch, I'm going to get in the habit of using this washi tape so much that it will irritate me when I finish a roll. You don't have to use washi tape when you're painting. It's a low tack tape. You can get a roll of painter's tape. You don't have to do this. I just like the designs. Sometimes the linear designs can help you line it up. If you wanted to let some of this hang off the page, I could match it with that lower edge of the pineapple, for example, and then you'd know that you're straight. So anything that has any kind of a linear repeating pattern on it will help you that way. We'll just get this taped off. And yeah, like I said, you can use painter's tape, you can use artist masking tape, you can even use regular masking tape probably. Anything that you tape down, when you pick it up, I recommend using a heat tool, and we'll probably go through that at the end today. Now this is a nice picture because I really like how close up it is. So we're going to make this kind of going out of frame a little bit. We've got the handle of our basket right here. I'm just kind of eyeballing this in because already we've got a leaf that is going to take over right about there. And then another leaf is going to go down here like so. And I'm going to go ahead and put the leaves in first because then I'll be able to see where I want to put those beautiful lilac blossoms. We're not going to paint each and every flower. It's going to be pretty abstract, which is the way that I like to paint. I think it's a lot of fun to paint that way. And not everything needs to be photorealistic. This leaf is interesting because it kind of curves over, so we'll leave that one in there. And let's see, there's one here that's kind of tipping up. That one's kind of cool. I don't like the way I've drawn that. Let me get my kneaded eraser. When you're drawing for watercolor, you really only need to include the basic information, but that information does need to be fairly accurate. There, I like that a little bit better. And let's see here. Now we've got some more leaves down here. I think 1, 2, if I have some leaves kind of coming out here, I think that's good. And then maybe one more down here behind this lilac that's coming out here. Now for the lilacs, and for these I'm just kind of going to do little squiggly cone shapes about like that. I'm not going to be very correct in these. I'm just blocking them in. and I want to have their loose nature kind of represented here, and also how thick they are they're densely packed in this basket. So now our handle of our basket's right about here. So we're going to fill this with lilacs. Okay, and then I can put an edge of the basket here and kind of put the end of it in here. Now a basket, if we're going to actually paint the wicker, is going to have a lot of texture to it. So let's kind of allow for that. Again, we're not going to make it really detailed. We're just going to put the suggestions in here that we have a basket. And that is really all we need for our drawing. Don't let the drawing intimidate you. Just kind of try and basically put what is in there and see where you can go from there. There's lots of ways. If you want to trace this picture, I'll put a link to the picture in the description. If you want to trace the picture, you sure can using a light box. Just print out a version of this on some printer paper. Just use your black and white ink. No need to waste your color ink. And you can also make a grid of it and then copy the grid here. There's lots of ways how to replicate something if the drawing intimidates you a little bit. I'm going to do something new. I don't think we've done this in a while. I'm going to wet the entire paper. Now when you wet your paper in watercolor, you want to have an even sheen. So I'm tipping this up against the light, and I just want it to look wet. I don't want to see any puddles. Make sure I get everything in there. And I live in a very dry climate here in Colorado, so I kind of like to go over this a couple of times. There we go. You kind of really just want it to look nice and shiny and really even. Now I'm going to move on to our number 6 brush. Real quickly, let's get out our spray bottle and prime our paints. And I'm also going to spray that purple area and the other areas of my palette because I'm going to use some purple. So let's go into our number 6 brush, and I'm going to mix the ultramarine blue. Got a real loose puddle of water there. And some of this alizarin crimson. Just getting a nice reddish blue, which will give us a purple. We want it to lean a little bit red right now. So now we're going to go wet on wet and just tap this purple in different places. We're not going to be real careful. We're just getting a very loose start to our painting. Professional tip, this was a leaf. So we're not going to worry about that. Everything in watercolor is pretty forgiving. So now what we're going to do, let me straighten this out so you guys can see. That was the ultramarine and the alizarin crimson. So now I want to mix in a little bit more of the alizarin crimson, so we get it a little more towards a reddish purple, and continue to tap in just wherever you feel that you'd like to place that new level of color. And if you can see this, these paints are so nice. They're actually, if I can move my light so we're not getting a glare here, the pigments are starting to separate on the paper, and I think that creates such a beautiful effect. And as we go in with this damp into wet here, we're going to see more and more of that. So now that we've added in the red, let's go back and put in some more ultramarine, and now we're going to take this to a real dark purple. Might need to add a little bit more crimson to keep it in that purple. And once again, we're going to tap this in, not everywhere. And on some of these lilacs, you will see that we have definitely covered up our leaves. That is a-okay. We can go through and go over those again. That's all we want to do right now. Now you have a choice here. You can either let this dry or you can dry it with a heat tool. And since I'm going to try to do this in real time, I'm going to go ahead and grab the heat tool and we'll use that. I'm going to put a link to everything I'm using here. It'll be in our supply list. This is a really great investment if you think you're going to be doing watercolor for a while, because it's better than a blow dryer. What it does is it has this very gentle force to it. And if you're using a blow dryer, you might end up with too powerful of a force and you can actually move the paint on the paper. And here you'll see now that it's drying, we do have a color shift. The watercolor will always dry a couple of shades lighter than when you put it down. So that's pretty dry. Staying with our number 6 brush, now we're going to jump over to the green. And in this case, I'm going into our sap green, which is the lighter green that you have. And my palette just happens to have a yellow pile up there, so that's fine. I'll go ahead and put some of this sap green in this yellow pile. And now we're going to go in and kind of paint those leaves. Now this is going to be the first coat of the leaves. So we're just taking our brush and making these leaf-like strokes. And I'm leaving some space to kind of leave some highlights. And let's see. I'll go ahead and put another leaf down here. This right here can be a leaf. And I think this was intentioned, it's supposed to be a bit of lilac, but let's make it a leaf instead. And then we have this fun leaf here that is kind of cupped up this way, and it will be in the shade because we already have that lilac on it. Now while those are drying, let's go ahead and go into our burnt sienna. And this is going to be the start of our basket. So over here, in another well of your palette, just the burnt sienna to start. We're going to start by making the handle of this basket. So what you're going to do is just fill that in. And for now, we just go straight. Don't need to worry about making the braid on it. We will do that in just a moment. Same thing here. Let's go ahead and this is a little too watery. There we go. I'm going to fill this in. Just kind of sparingly over here because I want that lilac to hang down. And here we can leave some space. We'll fill some in here. And then we'll come down here. There, that's about all we need for that. Now it's time to get our heat tool again and give it a quick dry. This one is such a fun one to do because I always talk about watercolor, how it's so much like bringing something into focus. And that's exactly what this painting, what we're going to be doing with this painting. We're starting with the back of the painting and bringing it towards us. And as it comes toward us, we will end up with some beautiful shadows and dimension because of the different techniques that we're using. So now that that's dry, and again, we're still using our number 6 brush. You can use the other brushes if you want to, but I think probably this whole thing can be done with a number 6. Now let's go back to our leaves in that ultramarine mixed in with the green that we had. So we're looking for a really dark green. I think you can see that there. Let's work on this leaf first. Let's see, we're going to do something called negative painting. Now you can see the veins in the leaves and how they're lighter. So what we're going to do, I'm going to paint the tip very dark, leave some space, come up here and paint the rest. And so on. Let me connect this a little bit here. And we'll do this one. And we'll kind of try and do the same thing over here. I'm putting a very thin border on the leaf. And not making this too symmetrical because I don't want it to look too cut and paste. But let's see here if I can just get that very narrow. There we go. And now this one we're going to do a little bit differently. We'll put the dark side that's tipped up, we'll put that toward us, and we'll outline the leaf very loosely. And then come in like so. And then what we can do is add just a little more blue to this even. And make this even just that much darker. And let's do the same thing with this one over here. Let's see, it has a very dark edge on this side. And it comes up around there. And this one has some darkness to it. This one we'll just give kind of a straight design to. And then these over here, we'll go ahead and make this one into a leaf. And this is kind of fun because this particular one here can be shaded by that leaf. So let me get my brush wet and we'll just pull that over like so. Add a little more green to this. And this one, we'll just kind of add some shading like this, kind of like we did on the first one. Nothing has to be real exact here. We're just kind of playing. Just go in and make some playful swoops there on those leaves just to give them some extra dimension and texture. And now, while those are drying, let's go ahead and take a look at our basket. We're going to go into our burnt umber, which is that next darkest brown, and mix that in with your burnt sienna. And now what I'd like you to do is get some of the ultramarine and mix that in, just enough to make it a very dark brown. It should look like chocolate, like dark chocolate. And now we're going to add the design in this basket braid here. So starting on the up side and coming down, up, down, up, down, up, and then we're going to pick it up and do the opposite, like so. And then on every in-between spot, you can add a little loop. And it can be very loose. It doesn't have to be connected. You can have white space in there, but that will give you a kind of a braided look. Now for the bottom, add just a touch more burnt sienna, or excuse me, a touch more ultramarine to that, so that we're getting a very, very dark brown, almost black. And we're going to add our weaving lines in here. Now this one is going to be a little bit different than what we see in the photo. I am making this more like a slat woven basket. So I'm intentionally leaving space, and what I'm doing is creating those wide slats that are woven amongst a narrower vertical slat. There you go, and your basket is finished. Now I want to make sure this is completely dry, so let me grab that heat tool again. And here's where we're going to have a lot of fun. This time I do want to switch to our number 4 brush, and we're going to go back to our purple. Let's go ahead and mix that again, starting with the ultramarine, and I'm going to just go over here. We'll get that going in this, pull some of that out of here because it's a little too wet. There we go, we've got some ultramarine, and now some of the alizarin crimson. We're looking for a very dark, moody purple. That looks pretty good. So what we're going to do now is just very randomly make little left and right parenthesis motions. So I'll slow this down. I'm going left, right, left, right. Just wherever you feel that it would be good. And now I'll add a little more red to it, and we'll hit another one here. Let's go up here. Just random scumbles. Like I said, little parentheses, you can do dots, whatever it feels natural that you do. Now we'll go into this darker one here. And I'll do this guy. Now don't worry about the white space in here. We'll fill that up easily. And if you do this quickly, that's a good way to get a loose effect. Because you can see I went off of the flower there. That is just fine. What we want this to be is very loose and free. And I'll go back and go over some of these since it's dry. We don't want too many on there, but we definitely want it to be evident that these lines are here. These are our blossoms. Just really loosely putting these in. And now let's think about this center portion here where I've got some of this more red pigment. I'll put that down here and here. I'll kind of go in here as well. And when it's all said and done, those will look like shadows. So kind of go around the leaves. I'm just tapping it. And we might want to go down here as well. There, now let's get back to our dabbing and twirling. Just think about how the lilac looks from a distance. You can't really see all of the individual flowers, but you definitely know that it's a lilac and that there are definite little blooms there. We're not looking for photorealism here, we're just looking for fun. And I'm trying to get it so that the same purples aren't necessarily together. And now what I'll do is get this really dark, and now I'm going to go in and intensify these shadows just a little. And that will help to make these leaves pop a little bit. And let's see, let me look at the green on these leaves again. We're going to add some more of this ultramarine. You know, ultramarine is a color. If you stick around with me, you're going to be buying ultramarine by the gallon. I love this color so much, and I really do go through it. Punch up some of these leaves. This is something I talk about a lot in watercolor too. When you are, once you've tweaked something, chances are you might have to go back and tweak another part, because once you get one part the way you want it, it may be that the part you worked on before is now too light. There we go. Let's get our heat tool out. And you know what? Fast and furious, this one's finished. I wanted to give you guys a real quick and easy one to show you that if you only have a few minutes, you can always fit some watercolor into your day. Now that this is dry, let's go ahead and take off our tape. Another thing I like about this tape is if you're a card maker, this will really help you in making a card, because this will be able to be cut very easily and put on a card. There we have it. Look at that. Let me use our fine liner that we've recommended, and I'm going to go ahead and sign this. I hope you are signing all of your work, because it will really let you know your progression and your progress, and that's the best thing you can do when you're when you're dabbling in watercolor, is to look back at your progress. It's so easy to tell yourself that you're not doing it right and not doing it well, but when you look back at your progress, I think you'll see that you're doing just fine. All right, folks, there's our basket of lilacs, and I hope you all enjoyed these first 15 lessons so much. I so appreciate you joining me, and we'll see you next time. For our next set of watercolor lessons at the beginner level, leave a comment. Let me know what you'd like to paint. I'd always love to hear from you. Thank you so much, guys. Have a great week. Bye now.